And we're letting folks in.
All right.
If you're starting your thing, you want to save my bathwater, you're gonna take a shower.
Nope, got to start muting people. Hi, everybody. How is everyone? Got some good backgrounds there, I can see.
Uh-oh, what happened?
Oh, I see some familiar. I see some blurred backgrounds. I see some patriotic backgrounds. See some lovely backgrounds.
Oh,
So we're just letting people come on into the meeting, you guys. So just hang with us a couple of minutes. I'm one of those people that misses the days when we used to meet in person, and I hope someday we'll meet in person again, despite the fabulous technology that is Zoom meetings. But we're grateful that so many people have taken some time to join us. I lost my co-host, but I'll bet he's in there somewhere in these little boxes.
I see him.
Okay, let me try a different view. So are most people in, Ray?
We have 41 folks so far, and yes, we have most people in.
Okay.
We have a few still coming in.
All right, well, then I think we're going to start. Oftentimes, meetings with environmentalists don't start on time, so it's my personal crusade to try and start meetings on time. So let me introduce myself. Let me introduce my co-host. I'm going to talk a little bit about the format of the meeting. We really appreciate you making the time this evening, and I think you'll learn a lot. So my name is Elizabeth. My last name is Lamb, and I'm working with Residents for Responsible Desalination and Orange County Coastkeeper to help inform people and mobilize people about the upcoming Coastal Commission meeting about Poseidon. The way we're hoping we structure the meeting tonight is to hear this informative presentation by Bill Powers, and then take questions, and then we'll talk about the things that we're doing to prepare for the Coastal Commission hearing that will be on May 12th. I'm hoping the chat is up and running and that people know how to use it. And it would be great to start off with people maybe saying what it is that concerns them about Poseidon in the chat box, if you are sophisticated and know how to use a chat box. Ray, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, just a second here. I'm letting some more people in.
Ray's multitasking.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. My name is Ray Heimstra. I'm the Associate Director of Programs at Orange County Coastkeeper.
So let me go ahead and introduce Bill Powers. I'm going to just say a couple of words about him and then turn the meeting over to him. Mr. Powers is a registered professional mechanical engineer in California and Missouri with over 35 years of experience in energy and environmental engineering. And he has written numerous journal articles on the strategic cost and reliability advantages of local solar power and battery storage over large-scale remote transmission-dependent renewable resources. And he often testifies as an expert witness on alternatives to conventional power generation infrastructure. The other thing I want to say about Bill is I've worked with him on projects in the past, and I've already said this to him, but I'm going to tell you guys too. He's very good at taking complicated issues and boiling them down so just a person like me can understand them. So I'm really grateful that he's making the time to join us. And let me turn the meeting over to you, Bill.
Great, Elizabeth, thank you. And thank you everybody for coming out tonight to listen to my presentation. And what I'll ask is if Ray can share the screen with me, I'll go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint that I have. And just as a little background for the folks that are in the audience is I looked at, back in 2016, I looked at the greenhouse gas impacts of the Huntington Beach desal plant and whether the proposal that the proponent had on the table was sufficient to get the job done, to neutralize the greenhouse gas emissions from the facility. And conclusion was that they would fall far short, and that really hasn't changed in the last 6 years. I did an update for this round, which I put out in January of 2022 for Orange County Coastkeeper, and I want to take the opportunity to go over that assessment for all of you who have chosen to attend tonight. So you should be able to see my screen. And can you see my screen, Ray? And
We
Elizabeth?
can.
Okay, we're good to go. So climate change impacts proposed Poseidon desalination plan. And I'm listing up front here, the source is the report I put together for Orange County Coastkeeper a few months ago, an assessment of what Poseidon is proposed to do. So let's just a little 101, just take a look at what this facility is going to look at. This is a bird's eye view of the proposal. In the center, you see two what look like sketches of homes, and those are the boilers that have been on that site for many decades, and which historically have pulled seawater in for their cooling needs and discharged the warm cooling water back into the ocean. And what you see out in the ocean is the farthest out is the discharge of the warm water, and the closer into the coast is the intake, where the intake is the farthest out, and then the discharge is the closer to the coast. And so that system's been in use for decades. One of those two older plants is now retired. And the proposal on the property is to put this facility toward the bottom of the screen. On the left-hand side, you see a row of what look like little boxes in a rectangle, and that's the heart of this desalination plant, which is the geomembrane to get the sea salts out of there. Anyway, the idea originally 20 years ago was, let's take advantage of the fact that this power plant is here, it's pulling water in, it's sending warm water out, and the warmer the water, the more efficient this desal process. But these older boilers are now being phased out of commission, and the plant will operate basically independent of anything related to the power plants if it is to be built. So one area of controversy, and I'll eventually get to the issue of greenhouse gases, but I'm going to take a couple of minutes just to point out some of the principal facilities. So we looked at the intake coming in off the coast and the discharge. Well, on the left here is the intake. The upper left, you see 4 cylinders. Those are called wedge wire screens. Those are basically cylinders that have very fine rows of metal to attempt to minimize how many larvae and small fish are pulled into that intake, which has always been a problem with these seawater intakes. And I won't go into a lot of detail about some of the weaknesses and deficiencies of those wedge wire screens, but that's the plan. Try and strain out as much as the marine life that would otherwise be pulled through the system and killed. And then on the outfall side, which is on the left, the lower right, what you see is water getting sent out and then into basically a plenum, and then up and out back into the ocean. And the issue there is that water is going to have more concentrated salts in it. And so they've got basically what the ocean water to cut down on the salt content as it hits the ocean. So let's take a look too at a very important question, which is there a need for this? And this bar chart just shows actual water demand in Orange County, 1989 to the present day, and then a projection going forward. And you can see the trend, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, is that Orange County is using less and less water. through recycling and conservation. And back when this project was originally proposed, if you start from the left and go in, down at the left, you see 1989, 1990, 1994, 1995, 1999, 2000. Well, that's about the time it was originally proposed. Orange County had a demand of more than 500,000 acre feet a year, but that has steadily declined down to 2020. And the projection is that by 2035, the demand will rise to only a portion of where it was back in the year 2000. So what's happened in Orange County has really been pretty spectacular in terms of the decline in demand. And that's had a big impact on the project and the need for the project. So where does the water come from? These are the sources of water in 2020. Most of it's groundwater, the top line. Some imported water, a very small amount of creek water, and then some recycled water that's used for non-potable reasons. But Orange County is somewhat unique in the state, I think, with all the groundwater that is used and reused to meet the potable water needs. So projecting forward, and this matters a lot because when the project proponents are making their future projections, and the interesting part of the current future projection is even the water agencies in Orange County are not projecting any need for the Poseidon desal water. They're projecting something not dissimilar to what we just looked at, but with an additional amount of recycled water to meet the need. And so this is an important point that the local water agencies themselves are not indicating there's a need for this facility for over the next 25 years or so. So now we're getting closer to the main event, which is the greenhouse gas impact of the plant. And so what this table is about, it's a comparison of the energy intensity of water supply alternatives. Conservation obviously is the best. You conserve water, you don't need to do anything to produce more water. So the energy intensity is zero. Potable reuse, which is what Orange County is doing so effectively, is the next least energy intensive way to get potable water to Orange County residents. The river transfer, Colorado River Transfer State Water Project, we move a lot of water from Northern California through the State Water Project. We move a lot of water from Colorado River as well to demand centers in Southern California. And you can see that at potable reuse, which is the lead card in Orange County, use it once. We don't have to go into that. What matters is the comparative energy intensity. The river transfers, potable reuse, State Water Project transfers almost 3 times the intensity of groundwater reuse, and then desal, which is nearly 5 times as energy intensive. And it's the energy intensity that really impacts the greenhouse gas emissions of the desalination process. And the issue is you have to use a tremendous amount of energy to drive that seawater through very fine membranes that catch the salts and then leave a freshwater product on the other side. So the energy intensity translates into greenhouse gas emissions. And the way that works is that this facility isn't going to have any power generation on site, but it's going to draw power from the electric grid. At this point in time, that power is coming from Southern California, Edison. There's a community choice aggregator that is starting up in the area that will be providing some or most of that power in the future. But the bottom line is that currently a fair amount of that power is fossil fuel power, natural gas fired power, little bit of coal power from out of state. And with that coal power and natural gas fired power, they're producing CO2 emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. And so it's a straightforward calculation to go from energy intensity and knowing how much water is going to be produced per year to the tonnage of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide equivalent emissions. And so in this table, in the middle column, we're just looking at the same numbers for energy intensity we looked at on the last slide, but that's translated here into tons per year of CO2 emissions from that this facility is responsible for. They're not generated on the site, but they're generated somewhere. And much of that generation is happening in Southern California to produce the power that they need for the desalination process. So at the bottom, it's showing what is the estimate that Poseidon has put on the table in terms of tons a year of CO2, about 75,000 tons in US, British tons. So I'm expecting everybody will memorize this table because it's really dense. So we'll take a minute to do that. Just kidding. Here is the main event, but we're probably only going to look at the first column of numbers. And this is the comparison of proposed Poseidon carbon offset ceiling price to the California Air Resources Board. They have a cap and trade program for CO2, and they have allowance prices. And so the main weakness in Poseidon's proposal is, if you look at first column, first entry, Poseidon self-selected carbon offset price cap. They say we'll pay up to $10 a ton. If we can't get it for $10 a ton, we'll just write a check to the city of Huntington Beach for $10 a ton and turn it over to them. And the challenge is going down in that column, California Air Resources Board, that's one of the sources that they said they would access carbon credits. And a carbon credit, for example, would be a wind farm in Iowa is producing electric power, but it's also clean power because it's wind power. So they sell that power to the grid at the same price every other provider is providing power to the grid, but they can also sell that renewable energy aspect of that power as a separate product, renewable energy credit. And so there's currently a flood of renewable energy credits in the market, and you can also go out and offset your emissions by for this is an example that Poseidon used, that we will offset our Ecuador, we'll protect it, and we'll do it that way. And those types of credits are now perceived as sketchy. And the reason is I never really know what will happen to that forest, and forest was already there. And so you're not necessarily adding to greenhouse gas reduction by doing those types of things. Same is true with wind farm that exists and you're tapping into the renewable component of it. That's not building more renewable energy, that's just tapping into an aspect of an existing farm. So this concept of just buying offsets and credits is pretty controversial, but the California Energy or the California Air Resources Board has a pretty rigorous system of determining credits that are legitimate, that legitimately reduce carbon burden. The problem for Poseidon is they put, for unclear reasons, just set a cap at $10 a ton. One clear reason is that's pretty cheap. And so it doesn't cost them much money to meet this climate obligation that they've entered into. But if you look at the next line, November 21, the cap and trade price, almost $30 a ton. That's 3 times higher than what they've capped the price at. So they're not going to have access to high grade credits if they're only going to pay $10 a ton. And so the issue that the California Coastal Commission that is having this hearing on May 12th brought up, kind of corroborated with this report, is if all they're going to do is pay $10 a ton, they can't buy anywhere near the credits that they're going to need to offset carbon. And so that's really the takeaway from this table. Another big issue, in fact, really just as big or bigger issue, is that the LA Basin area, which includes Huntington Beach down through, or Orange County through Huntington Beach, is an electrically congested area. And what that means is that at peak times, summertime peak, it can be touch and go, at least in the past, to make sure that sufficient electricity is being provided to all those that need it. And this will be one of the biggest single electricity demand resource or sources sites in Orange County if it is built, 30 megawatts continuous. Well, what that means is that at crunch time, at peak in the summertime, an already tight area now has another 30 megawatts of demand it's got to meet in order to assure that everyone gets power. And there have been a few events that have occurred in this area over the last decade that have heightened the focus on this area as a electrically congested area. One is Southern California Edison made some mistakes in the design of the upgrade of the San Onofre nuclear plant. It was unexpectedly shut down in 2012. That resulted in kind of an emergency procurement because that plant was producing over 2,000 megawatts of power, and that was an unexpected hit at the time. So the LA Basin, including Huntington Beach, became a real focus for putting in more power plants. One recently started up at Huntington Beach at the same site or nearby. A lot of activity, battery storage in that area. So the Austin, there was a well blowout at Aliso Canyon up on the northern edge of LA. And what that did was restrict the amount of gas available at peak to go to gas plants in the LA Basin. And what this graphic is, you see all these red squares. There's some red and purple squares. Those are power plants, gas-fired power plants. And at least for a while, they were potentially restricted in how much gas they could get at crunch time because of the leak and the subsequent fallout, meaning political fallout from what happened at Aliso Canyon. The state is still looking at shutting that gas storage area down by 2027. At least that's the tentative plan. Poseidon, if it gets the green light, if it goes forward, it won't even be online in 2027. So it's another area of geographic potential constriction of power supply. Just stepping back for just a moment, I mentioned the issue of these offsets and emission credits that Poseidon is proposing to use to offset its greenhouse gas emissions. It points out that concerns on the validity of this type of offsetting, where you say you're going to preserve a forest or you're going to take a fallow field and turn it into a forest, and that these proposals have often turned out to be less than what they're advertised to be. So an alternative to these offsets, and something that deals with the power challenges that are in Huntington Beach and in the LA Basin, is put in local power. The impacts are local, and the offsets for at least the power side conceptually should be local as well. But more than that, if you're not producing that power right there, then you're contributing to a potential problem with the grid. It's an issue. So this colorful graphic is one of the issues that the electric utilities have used to justify doing so much of our renewable generation out in the boondocks in the desert, is that, well, we can generate more cheaply far away and then we just transmit it in, and that's the way we're going to do it. And the point of this graphic, not to get into too much detail, is the commercial rooftop solar. And just cutting to the chase, I'm advocating that a lot of solar be put into the Huntington Beach and surrounding communities to offset the power demand of the Poseidon facility. But what's important here is these bars are showing how much does it cost to put in a solar array. It's a commercial rooftop in Huntington Beach. The gray, the red, the green, the blue, that's just hard cost of the solar panel, cost of the inverter, cost of the rails, cost of the labor. And then the orange is all the soft costs, hustling the job. Where can we put it? Is a roof good? Goes into doing a one-off commercial building. And then on the right, you can see that the hard costs, gray, red, green, blue, pretty similar. The issue is that if a utility goes out for a request for proposal for a big 100 megawatt array in the desert, that's it. You get 100 megawatts for signing one contract, not 50 or 100 contracts. And so the point here is that you can build solar in Huntington Beach, and if you can get knock down all of the hustle that goes into doing one-off commercial buildings, you can compete with remote projects in terms of cost. And there have been big projects in the LA, greater LA area over time that do exactly this. The Southern California Edison did over 100 megawatts on warehouse rooftops in the Inland Empire a few years ago. We would have done a lot more of that in the LA Basin, except that the proponent of this was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so this was a very big, expanding program until he left office. And within a very short period of time, the utilities were able to turn this around and stop building on these big commercial buildings and go back out into the desert. And so, but another element of this now is that many rooftop solar facilities on homes, on commercial buildings, warehouses, if they go in, they're going in with battery power as well, which is great. That means that every solar array on a roof, if it's got batteries, is basically potentially an independent power plant. And so this is just a graphic showing the very rapid decline in the cost of lithium batteries, which currently are the go-to technology for battery storage in this application where you combine the two. But when you add batteries to the solar arrays, you can reliably assure that you have the power you need to offset the Poseidon demand during crunch time. And one interesting aspect that I stumbled upon when I was preparing this report is that the California Energy Commission had chosen Huntington Beach to do kind of a deep dive on putting solar power into that urban core. And what you see here is some graphics that came out of that report. On the left is a sub-transmission substation in the Huntington Beach. And then the graphic on the side is just an aerial view of the city, but showing where the main transmission lines go. And this was part of the study, was really well done. And their point here was to determine how much solar they could put in Huntington Beach and whether there were any restrictions like inadequate transmission supply or capacity to do that. And they also looked at, parking lots. We can do parking lots. We can do big utility scale, like those rooftops that I was just showing you, solar to kind of economies of scale in the city. On the left, it's a very detailed effort that was done by UC Irvine's energy group to identify parking lots and their capacity. On the right, to identify larger commercial building rooftops and how much capacity they could put in. And so it was useful that Huntington Beach was the focus of a design effort that is what I'm advocating, is that build in Huntington Beach, can't completely cover it in Huntington Beach, go to neighboring communities, but put the power there so that you're offsetting that demand where it matters at a potentially congested point in the grid. And so the my perspective on this is that the Poseidon's obligation should be to identify and develop the greenhouse gas emission reductions right there in Huntington Beach and adjacent communities. And I haven't mentioned this earlier in this presentation, but the amount of solar they would need to put in would be about 150 megawatts and about 30 megawatts of storage. And 150 megawatts of solar may sound like a lot, but in Southern California territory, under the net metering program, and I'm sure many of you on this call have solar, you have net metering, you understand that concept, that the 400 megawatts a year is going into Southern California Edison territory in net metering today. And so 150 megawatts is significant, but it is not outside the realm of what's happening now in the LA basin. And so that concludes the formal presentation.
So this is always tricky to do on Zoom. If people have questions, you could put them in the chat, or if people want to raise their hand, we could unmute you, or maybe nobody has any questions. We can't unmute everybody because what happens is some people's background noise comes in. But let me know if people have any questions. There's one here that says, I thought the new AES plant was supposed to have a building full of batteries. No?
Oh, there is the Alamitos AES site does have a very large battery facility, and Southern California Edison is putting in a lot of batteries, or all of you, if you're Southern California Edison customers, are putting in a lot of batteries via Southern California Edison. But the concept here is that is true. There are a lot of batteries going into the LA basin, but the concept here is that new facilities going in should carry their own weight, not draft off of an earlier installation.
So someone is asking, it's a very good presentation, which I agree. Are you assuming the project gets built, or?
Well, my job was to analyze their greenhouse gas mitigation strategy and assess whether I thought it was adequate or it was inadequate and there was a much better way to do it. So those were my marching orders.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk a little bit about whether it's going to get built or not and the role that all of us will play. Someone said that if once the old power plant is destroyed, they're likely to put a battery building there. I'm not exactly sure what that means.
Well, they could. I mean, they could actually do it right at the site where, in fact, that was a question that came up with one of the staff at the California Coastal Commission. Couldn't they put a battery right at the site? Big battery? And the answer is yes. I mean, they could put it in many commercial buildings and industrial buildings, or they could put it with residences, or they could put it right there at the site. So all of those are options.
So there's people asking about the hearing itself, which we're going to roll into. There's a couple more questions sort of more directly about your talk. And it says here that, or someone asked, so if Poseidon does go ahead, they should install solar and batteries rather than buying carbon offsets?
Yes.
And
short answer, yes.
So a lot of times people have said to Poseidon, you should do this or that. And Poseidon will say, well, it costs us too much money. We won't make enough money. Are there cost issues here that you know of that impact that? Or maybe Ray knows? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question, because one of the issues with the offsets, especially the price cap that Poseidon put on it, is that it's really de minimis relative to the cost of the plant. So this is a $1.4 billion capital project, and they're proposing to spend about up to $35 million on carbon offsets for the entire 50-year period. And so for them, this approach is very inexpensive. But I think that a core issue with this the challenges to this plan. If Poseidon can't do it right and make money, that's a reason not to do it. If they can't put the solar and battery storage in and find a way to make money, then that is another reason not to do the project. But one thing to keep in mind is if you build large-scale solar and battery facility, that's a money-making enterprise. And so they actually could end up spending less money doing a project like that than just paying for offsets. But I'm sure they would claim that it would make their profitability less.
So
So
Bill, there's
there's-
a question. It says, if you have only 4 hours of battery storage, what runs the plant after those 4 hours?
Well, the purpose of the batteries, the purpose is not to run the plant. It's to make sure that during that period of time in the summer, say between 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. or 5 p.m. and 9 p.m., that during that period that plant is carrying its weight and it's not contributing to more grid congestion that could contribute to a blackout. So that's its function. It's not to run the plant 24/7, just to make sure that plant doesn't become a problem during peak grid demand times.
Bill, here's another great question. Hasn't Poseidon agreed to the OC Power Authority so that they can opt into alternative energy?
Well, they have said that they're chatting with them about that, and that at this point there are no details on it, the no obligation to pursue it. And so my impression of this at this point is it's primarily a soundbite. But I will say that one of the issues with Orange County Power Authority, for example, we have a similar power authority in San Diego where I live, which is called San Diego Community Power, is they're not developing local resources. They're tying into remote resources. And so an arrangement with the local power authority doesn't necessarily mean they're going to do anything locally. Even if
Another good question here is, can Carb disallow their carbon offset credits if they're not up to standards?
And first of all, you have to say what carb is, besides something you shouldn't eat too many of.
California Air Resources Board, and they oversee our greenhouse gas cap and trade allowance program. And that's a good question, Ray. And I actually don't think, since Poseidon put a cap of $10 on what they'll pay for a CO2 offset, they won't be able to buy ARB credits at that low price. They will be substantially more costly than that. So it's not so much that ARB would disallow the credits. The ARB wouldn't really even be engaged, because the credits that Poseidon ultimately, if they hold to this line, they would have to be something that ARB definitely wouldn't recognize, but ARB might not be involved at all if Poseidon is not willing to pay the price, the published price for those allowances.
So I think,
I think there's a question from Debbie. Did you have a question? So you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
okay, who loves Zoom as much as me?
I'll unmute me. Going back to Bill's, like your second slide, which is a question I've had all along. I taught earth science in this area, and I understand the groundwater, where that's most of our water is coming from. My concern with this whole project is that it's only going to increase the cost of water for the residents of Huntington Beach, which is already going up. But it says that our, with the district water board, we're kind of using less water. I just feel we're going to end up paying more for water to cover their costs, Poseidon's costs.
Ray, you want to speak to that?
You're correct. So if we buy really expensive water, which is all Poseidon can produce, and we're required to buy that first, then that will absolutely raise our water costs. So that's an unfortunate impact if Poseidon does get approved.
And do you want to say a couple of words about what's it called, take or pay?
Yeah, so what Poseidon is asking for and what's going on, I saw a question, this will relate a little bit to that, about what's the history of the Carlsbad plant. So for Poseidon to be guaranteed a profit, which is what they want, then they require what's called a take or pay contract. So in Carlsbad, they have a 30-year take or pay contract with the San Diego County Water Authority. And they want a 30 or 35-year take or pay contract with the Orange County Water District. And what that means is you pay for the water, whether you take it or not. So obviously, if you're going to pay for it, you're going to take it. So the result could be when our aquifer is full and we really don't have any place to put this water, we may have to let lower cost Santa Ana River water that we would get for free, or even imported water, or stop recycling as much water if the aquifer is full, because we have to take the Poseidon water first, or we can not take it and just pay them anyway. So it's a way for them to guarantee their profit no matter what happens, because the Municipal Water District of Orange County, in a study they did, estimated that Poseidon might be useful about every 9 years. So that other 8 years, you can't run a plant once every 9 years and make it. So that's why they're requiring that we would take the water all the time. And that's to guarantee their profit.
So I kind of want to move on to talking about the Coastal Commission meeting. I see one other, because we don't want this meeting to go too long. So one other question about, can Carb require Poseidon to pay more than the $10 cap?
Carb can't, but the Coastal Commission can reject the Poseidon proposal based on them not being willing to pay enough. And that's actually what they recommended in their staff report, that with this low cap, they couldn't purchase enough offset credits to offset the CO2 emissions from their power use. And so the end result is actually what everyone on the call is engaged in, which is the staff commission saying, or the commission staff saying, reject the project in part because they're not going to pay enough for offsets. So
I want to roll on to talking about the Coastal Commission meeting, because surprise, surprise, we'd like people to attend the Coastal Commission meeting. Is that cool with you, Ray and Bill?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, before we get going on this, I'm going to repost the link to where you can sign up to speak for the hearing. And there was a comment that it mentioned that it was to sign up online. It actually gives you a choice. It asks you if you're going to be there in person or if you're going to be there online. And ideally, we want you there in person. But if you can't make it, then obviously the online choice is your next choice.
So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the Coastal Commission hearing if people are up for it. So as you can tell, we have lots of brilliant people helping us. We have Bill Powers. We have folks whose specialty is seawalls and the impact of the Poseidon seawalls on our coast. We have lobbyists, we have lawyers, we have experts, we have a huge environmental coalition fighting this, because it truly is one of the worst environmental projects proposed for the coast of California. So Sierra Club, NRDC, Coastkeeper, all the major environmental groups are all working on this with us. And the reason that we host these community meetings is to inform you, but to ask you to be part of the effort and do what you can as a member of the community. And that we are hoping that people will attend the Coastal Commission meeting and attend it in person if you possibly can. Let me just say, Poseidon has spent a lot of money trying to push this project forward. And Ray always says, if it was a issue just based on the merits, there's no way Poseidon would have gotten as far as it's gotten, but there's a lot of special interest supporting it. And so what I would say to you as fellow community members is that you take a day out of your life to attend the Coastal Commission hearing and go talk to the Coastal Commission. And if you don't want to talk to them, if you're nervous, then come and hold a sign, because I'm going to tell you that Poseidon's going to bring all their, I don't know for sure that they're paid, but those kinds of people with them, and they're going to crowd the meeting room and they're going to try to convince the Coastal Commission that everybody loves this project. And I feel, as just a community member and a regular person, that if I've got all these heavyweights doing all this impressive technical work and policy work, the least I can do is show up for a day and say my piece to the Coastal Commission. So we're hoping that you'll do that. And our final meeting that we're going to have next Monday is all about preparing for the Coastal Commission. We have another wonderful speaker, Susan Jordan, who is a lobbyist for the public interest for the environmental community in front of the Coastal Commission. So she knows a lot about what impacts them. So we'll talk a little more about the meeting, but can people just do me a big favor and raise your hand and tell me that at least you're considering going to the Coastal Commission meeting? So I'll have some friends there. Great. And we're going to do what we can to help cover parking and the cost of lunch and all that other stuff, because we know we're asking a lot of you. But for people that have been following this issue for a while, there's been other agencies that perhaps have more power, but the Coastal Commission is famous for being independent and doing often the right thing, though not always. So it really is, in a lot of ways, our best shot at killing this beast. And they've killed other projects that had a lot of political oomph behind them as well. So we just want to do our part. And show our solidarity for opposing this project and for doing our part with this broad environmental coalition. Do you want to add anything, Ray? Or there were some questions.
I just want to go ahead and add a few details on the meeting itself. So the meeting is at the Hilton in Costa Mesa. That is located at Bristol Street in the 405 freeway. It's very close there to the South Coast Plaza. Most of you know where that is. There is on-site parking that requires being paid. As Elizabeth mentioned, for those that ask, we're gonna work to reimburse that. There's also nearby free parking on the street. That's a fairly short walk away, and then the Coastkeeper office is about a half mile away, and we're going to be running a shuttle, and we have hundreds of free parking spaces at the Coastkeeper office. So we're going to have lots of parking options for you. You're going to get a follow-up email from this meeting with talking points, a map of the location, kind of a guide to participating. Many of you already know what you're going to say, and the number one thing to say is what you really feel, because the coastal commissioners recognize that. Reading a script isn't bad, especially if you want to go ahead and say something very specific and make sure you're on point. The main thing is just to say what you think about the plant, and any comment is good. A question just there, when? So this is Thursday, May 12th. The doors will open at 8 a.m. So there's room for about 300 people in the room, and we are expecting it to be full. And Poseidon will try to pack the room with their people. So for those of you that can, showing up at 7 o'clock in the morning and being the first ones in and grabbing some chairs is very important. We're gonna have signs, stickers, stuff like that available. Like I said, lunch. We have a room that's going to be available for you don't always have to sit in the meeting room. We're going to have a room available to go to, and then provide lunch, so that you won't need to leave the facility It's a little bit different than doing things in a public space like we have in the past. So we will have that meeting room for our, for our activities and things like that. We'll also probably have a rally out during the lunch break. We'll go out front to the sidewalk and have a rally. Some of you may have gone to a rally we had this weekend at Edison Park, and we'll do something like that. We got a message from KC with Surf Riders. They're going to be there, and along with all of our other coalition members. And he said you can make your own No Poseidon poster right there.
So Ray, and somebody had asked, what are the sort of most salient points that the Coastal Commission is going to respond to? Do you want to expand on that? I personally think it's really important to talk about your own community and your experience in your community, because everybody has a place where they live, including commissioners. But what are some other points?
Correct. So first of all, I want to reiterate, just saying whatever means the most to you. But what we're hearing from the commission is that the need issue is an important one. The whole sea level rise, and then Bill's presentation on greenhouse gases, he made a great point, making a demand that they buy Carb authorized credits or something more than just passing the buck along to Huntington Beach is a good option. Bill, do you have a specific on greenhouse gas emissions? Do you have any specific talking points you'd like to mention?
Well, I think an easy one to remember is that the power demand of that facility should be offset locally. That it should be, for a couple of reasons. One, because you can verify it. It's real because those panels are right in Huntington Beach or nearby. The batteries are right there, and they're serving an important function, which is protecting that region from grid outages by providing power right there. So to me, the most important thing is that the offsets for the greenhouse gases associated with the operation of the plant be there, local.
And well, I've thought about what I'm going to say, and I recently read this article in the Washington Post that talks about the massive decline of sea life and organisms in the ocean. And I'm going to reread that article and pull out some key points from that to remind the commission about the massive amounts of marine life that Poseidon will kill, because that to me just blows my mind, that they could have constructed a power plant with as many problems as it would still have, but they could have used subsurface intakes, and they chose not to. And I don't understand how a commission could vote for something that would do that much marine damage. And I also want to remind people that sometimes the way you win, and if there's any Poseidon spies on here, I'm sure I'm not saying something that you don't know, but is you don't sometimes get an up or down victory. The commission could put enough requirements in the path of Poseidon that they're just too much for them. That's happened before on other projects, and we are in it for the long haul, but it would be nice if the commission would just vote no on Thursday, the 12th. I tell the same boring stories over and over again as a sign of getting older. But I remember a long time ago, an earlier coastal commission had approved a bunch of development and harbor and stuff like that in the Bolsa Chica wetlands. And then the Bolsa Chica Land Trust took them to court, and the court said that the commission had violated their own coastal act, and it went back before the commission when the commission was different and more environmentally friendly, and they voted down that proposal. And you see the results now, right? That there are no houses out on those wetlands. So you have to be resilient and you have to keep going. I'm sorry, what, Ray?
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted, there were a couple other kind of good technical questions.
Okay,
One was,
sorry.
One was if I signed up to speak online and I want to speak in person, do I need to sign up again? I would go ahead and do so. That way it's not going to hurt. Another question is Oh, are they going to reduce our speaker time? We don't know. So plan on 2 minutes. And so, for instance, what I always tell folks, plan on 2 minutes. And if you're going to use a script or whatever, also have a 1 minute version. When this happened in 2013, and Poseidon did not go through, they started with 2 minutes, they cut it down to 1, then they cut it down to 30, and at the very end, they just asked people to say support or oppose because they had that many speakers. But I so be ready to be succinct, but also be ready to make your voice heard because that is going to matter.
It's your beach, it's your community, it's your ocean. It's really up to us, right? Bill Powers will be there, all of the other experts will be there, but we need to be there as the community because we have to demonstrate that our side is so opposed to this.
This is Brian Riley. I wanted to say, I thought I heard that Mr. Powers brought forth that it takes 3 times the energy to desalinate the seawater versus recycling wastewater. And I think that's a very good point that really can be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I see a hand in the air, Ray, but
Debbie, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? And
Just curious, how much money is the city of Huntington Beach making off of this?
not enough. So
I bet money.
they're going to get some money through property taxes and stuff like that. And I think that comes up, if I remember right, to several million a year, which is that's not small change, but it's not a lot in the size of their overall city budget. And what they're not talking about is how much the water rates are going to go up for Huntington Beach residents. There is a provision that they get the desalinated water at a reduced cost, but there isn't really that much desalinated water. They're still going to be using, the vast majority is going to be groundwater, and those rates are going to grow up dramatically just for them, just like everyone else.
Yeah, they are so in debt for the unfunded pensions. They're looking for everywhere they can to grab some more money.
Oh yeah, yep. All right, we're at about
so hey Ray, there
7:59.
was one really good question that I thought would be a good way just to wrap up, which was talking about the Poseidon lobbyists and their influence over the governor. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. So, the Poseidon, the reason this is even still alive is because of politics. So I think as we've seen with the staff recommendation, Poseidon doesn't meet the regulatory requirements that California requires. So they've used their political power to get through, and they've spent over $900,000 on lobbyists and campaign contributions and other things to try to get their way. And it was we had a great statement by one of our speakers on Saturday that said the governor said he perused the report. Well, we were laughing at the office today as he probably just glanced at the report, and then he asked his buddy, which happens to be Poseidon's lobbyist, hey, what do you think? And of course, the answer is this is a great program. Because if you remember the French Laundry fiasco, the guest of honor at that party that the governor got in trouble for going to, it was a Poseidon lobbyist and one of his best friends. And that wasn't by accident. Poseidon knows exactly what they're doing.
So they have that. They have that going on. And then what we have is every single environmental organization in California, plus human rights organizations, because it's a human right to water. And to privatize water and make it something that's for profit is a very dangerous path to go down. We have the staff report where the staff recommended that it not be constructed. So we've got some tools in our toolbox. They've got whatever they have. And what Ray and I are here to ask is that you donate a day to go to the Coastal Commission meeting. I'm gonna wear a mask, but I feel fine when I have a mask on, and do our part to stop this thing and to support the other environmental groups that will be there as well. So just do me a big favor, you guys, wave at me and tell me you're going to come to the Coastal Commission meeting, because that's what this is all about. Oh, I love to see all that waving. So I'm done talking, which is a lot for me. Ray, do you have anything to say, or would you say that we're pretty close to being wrapped up? Don't forget, next Monday is going to be more of our big planning organizing meeting on Zoom with Susan Jordan.
Yep, just a reminder, we're going to send you more information with everything you need to attend. Certainly, going to be a great program again on Monday, but May 12th is the big day. And having you stand there, and even better, speaking in that room will help those commissioners make the right decision, because there's going to be, there's nothing quite like public pressure. We've seen that work. So thank you, everybody.